Recorded a day early because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Well, hi there. My name is Charles Ray Dawson. I am the Associate Broker, Residential Sales Manager of ProStar Realty. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 236. Okay, so hope you guys are doing all right. It is just absolutely amazing. As soon as that little light comes on, my nose starts itching. Why is that? Anyways, so today is actually Wednesday. I do not know what's going to be happening tomorrow because I got a client coming into town and this and that and the other thing, and I got training, and I got a lot of time all of a sudden this afternoon, so let's get some recording done. Okay, it's been a fun day for just running through the news. Last week and stuff, we were talking about whether or not the sellers were starting to bug out and whatnot, and numbers did tweak a little bit on that. Nothing to continue on with that theory because, as soon as I open my mouth, half the world goes exactly the opposite direction. But I'm okay with that. But, then on the flip side, who knows, all right? Inventory did pop up just boy, the numbers are so much fun today. It's one of those weird things where you think Crawford report number would have gone down because supply went up and demand went down, which should have, but instead it went exactly the opposite direction. Don't know why, but hold on. Here's the guy who called me at 7 o'clock this morning, and he calls me at 7 o'clock this morning, and then he decides to call me right. Okay, it is literally 16 minutes later after I just hit pause on it because that was one of the guys from the post, and most of our post members, they're older. He's Vietnam, 65, 66 Vietnam, that kind of stuff, and technology. All right, technology. He's actually does a lot better than most. I give it to you, but this is the only second time he sent out a newsletter using the system, and like I said, he called me up 7 o'clock this morning. And I was like, oh, I was just putting your number in. But I'm going to need to send that newsletter out. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll be here. I've been sitting here all afternoon with pretty much nothing to do. And soon a little light goes on. Bam, there he is. So where were we? Okay, we were talking about the news. Okay, so I got a really great quote. And I like this quote so much I actually printed it up, and I've got it on my wall. And it's there are empires being built right now. This is called mega camp, not average camp. There are empires being built now off the bones of the individuals who won't get out of bed and do the work. I'm like, woo! I love me a good motivational quote. So that's up on the board right now, and that was actually by Gary Keller Williams, and I was reading an article where he was discussing that he's foreseeing that there's going to be a housing recession through to the end of 26. Okay, he's got a lot of people he pays money to give him a lot more information at his hands than I have at my hands. So, housing recession, what does that mean to you and me? Well, it means a lot more to me than it does to you, to be honest with you, all right? What if we have a slowdown in the market, and I would argue we already have a slowdown in the market. Look at our Cromford numbers, right? But in his case, he's he runs Keller Williams, all right? If if houses aren't getting sold, his agents aren't making money, which means he's not making money, which means his shareholder value starts going the opposite direction. And that gets my attention. I start reading that, and then Bloomberg, all right, the national business news site, and said that the housing market was stuttering. Right. All of these articles all say exactly the same things that we've known for the last 5 to 6 months, right? The market is slow, all right? Inventory is rising. In certain areas, prices are actually starting to drop, okay, including the South and the West. Midwest and Northeast are actually doing pretty good right now. But price changes are starting to happen. Now, Crawford is actually the Bloomberg report saying that Phoenix, we dropped in prices by 3.5%. Okay, from June to June. So June 24 to June 25, assuming that's the last numbers that they had. And Another article is saying, oh, we've dropped 5% and stuff like that. So I don't see us dropping the 5%, all right? But I do see houses coming onto the market, high and then getting stale and going low. If that makes sense, all right? So, but ultimately that means that the prices that are getting recorded are lower because of that. So what does that mean? Is the sky falling? Is it another crash? No, not really. Crashes are the kind of stuff where you see the panic selling. Okay, if we were sitting there looking at 30, 40, 50,000 listings, then you could start saying we're in the middle crash. What it is, we just stopped. The market's just stopped. Let's take a look at these numbers and I'll show you what I'm talking about. These are the numbers for August 13th, which is today. Soon as this is just absolutely amazing. The problem with trying to use two systems at the same time on top of each other is it really slows your machines up. I mean, like look how bad this thing is. It's just stuttering. It might look smooth to you, but for me it's like 20 frames per second. Anyway, so August 3rd, 13th, 2025. All right, actives actually went up 14. All right, it went to 23,657, with new listings being 2,057, up 73. My problem with this is that I did not run this at 9 o'clock. I ran this at 10:30. So we had a whole hour and a half of people to put their new listings on and whatnot. But that's basically, even if those 73 active listings or whatever that came up over last week came in the last hour and a half, that's still pretty much sitting pat. All right, contracts 21,083, dropped 8. Okay, activity's pretty much the same as last week. All right, closings were 1,192, and coming soon to an MLS near you are 494 new listings. Supply has dropped, okay, which is interesting because that supply is down to 100.2. All right. But it dropped on the Crawford report number, but it's higher on the active thing. These are the things that drive my brain nuts, right? 100.2 is pretty much as close as unless that shows 100 next week or 101, right? Average amount of houses that we're supposed to have for a population on the market. This is where we're supposed to be in a normal world. But this isn't a normal world, all right? It's because we have a demand of 75.8. All right, which actually also ticked up a little bit. How does our demand go up to 75.8? Well, our contracts actually dropped by 8. Not sure, all right? Crawford report, my observations, right? But it actually brought our Crawford report number from the 75 from last week to 76, which is trending better on the buyer side or on the seller side and getting this close to where to be. Real estate agents should only care about what the Crawford report number is. 76 means where we should have 100 houses selling in a month, we're only having 76 sell in a month. Right? That means for some very unhappy real estate agents. But they're the ones who won't get out of bed and do the work. Right? Agents who are getting out of bed and doing the work, we're doing all right. All right. So, with this thing, which Gary Keller was saying, all right, is that Gary Keller is actually thinking that this will be spectacular because we're going to get rid of the dead wood. Okay, and let's talk about recessions here for a second. All right, actually, one last little data point before I go into the rant mode. All right, because you guys can tell there's a rant mode coming up, can't you? All right, look at all this green. Okay, these are all neighborhoods, cities that are improving towards the seller side, all right? And we are still in a seller's market out there in Cave Creek, Chandler, Fountain Hills, and Paradise Valley. What does this have? All these have in common? Rich people. Rich people. Rich people whose incomes are tied into investments and not payroll. I would like to add a little caveat on this, or just a little point that, one of the things that Bloomberg, a notorious free trade publication, talking about, well, a lot of people aren't buying houses because they're afraid of the tariffs, right? The people with stocks and bonds and own companies are apparently not afraid of the tariffs because they're happy to buy houses. Just roll that one around in your head. Okay. Balanced markets right now are going to be Scottsdale, Avondale, Glendale, Phoenix, Mesa, Gilbert. Okay. And then for the buyer's market, if you're looking for the deals, Tempe, Goodyear, Peoria, Queen Creek, Surprise, Buckeye, Maricopa. These are all your starter home communities out on the outside. They're also the people who are going to be most impacted by interest rates. First-time home buyers get impacted by interest rates so much more than somebody who's trying to get their second or third house, right? So let's talk about, a real estate recession and what a recessions do for you. From an economic standpoint, what a recession or a downturn in the market does is it helps burn out the dead wood. Right? One of the problems that Japan has had during their last decade is they would not let companies fail. Okay, and because they would not let companies fail, they had zombie companies that were just floating around out there, not profitable, not capable of becoming profitable because they had too much dead wood. We sort of saw this thing going on with the American auto industry in the mid-aughts, right? That because of the agreements that they had signed with the unions and a whole bunch of other companies, Chevy and GM was having a real time. They were looking at having to declare bankruptcy. Okay, and part of that restructuring would have been having to renegotiate their loan or their contracts with their unions. Well, Obama administration came in, waved his magic jug-eared wand, and fixed something. And basically, what he did is he made everybody renegotiate, including Ford, who didn't need to because they were profitable. Personally, if I'd been the CEO of Ford right now, I would have filed a lawsuit saying, "Hey, we beat them fair and square. All right, they made bad decisions. They wrote bad deals. They're going out of business. We're their competition. Why are you making us bail them out?" All right. CEO of Ford didn't have the balls to do that right now. So at the time. So same thing. The company dies out. Real estate companies die out. Okay. Small mom and pop brokerages who do not have the technology or the fire or whatever it's going to take to go out there and make real estate money. Okay. But let's make it even more granular. The real estate agent who's only out there and is going to close one or two a year because it's a family member, right? Or somebody they work with, in the cubicle next to them, right? These part-timers are going to, I'll be straight up with you, okay? They're the worst people from a transactional side as a professional side to have on the other side. Oh, great. This is Janet. Janet is only going to return my calls after 5:30 because she can't during business hours because her boss won't let her take personal phone calls. And that people will hire Janice to be a real estate agent. Anyways, so if these agents get out of my industry, okay, and we still keep having that churn, I mean, seriously, all right, let's take a look at this. We got 40,000 real estate agents in Maricopa County. 40,000. Let's go back to, look at this. If it dropped down to 30,000, okay, we would have a better balance of agents to transactions. All right, dropping it down by 10,000, right? But we're not going to because it is so easy to become a real estate agent, right? That was last thing I wanted to wrap up is I've been doing a deep dive all day today because in 2015, okay, in 2015 there was a report that was commissioned by the National Association of Realtors. All right. And it was a big think tank, one of those consulting firms. And it was, we want you to identify what our industry's biggest problems are. What are the hurdles we have in the near future? And what do we have to prepare for? And this consulting firm interviewed a lot of agents, brokers and lenders and consumers, government officials, and put together this huge report. And they released the report. And the report basically said this: the real estate industry has a serious problem, which will have long-term damaging effects on its future and its ability to function in the future. And the number one biggest threat to real estate today is moron freaking real estate agents who pass a 90-hour class and a test, go out there and they're unsupervised by unscrupulous brokers who don't care to manage their agents. And then they run around out there screaming they're a real estate agent and screwing up people's financials lives. I might have paraphrased a bit there, but you guys get the point. That's what the report said. You know what your problem is? You. Well, NAR published it, and the wailing and shrieking of gnashing of teeth. You mentioned that report on social media, and Gladys,
I've been a real estate agent for 32 years, and you're not allowed to talk about our industry like that. I'm putting you up for an ethics violation.
Yeah, we weren't supposed, and hey, you guys know my rant, all right? Half of our problem with this real estate industry is that we can't talk shit about the bad agents, all right? I'm sorry, Ray, that's against the code of ethics. We are above reproach. Suck my whatever. Anyways, look at that. I edited myself right at the last second. Yeah. And so it turned into a little flame war. Okay. Is this a problem? Isn't this a problem? And people saying, yeah, this is a damn problem, boys and girls. And like, oh no, this is perfect. And well, it's 10 years later and they're all dead. At least Gladys, the 32-year, in the industry lady, she shuffled off her mortal coil. Good to see you go. All right. But meanwhile, in there, what did this report say? Hey, you guys got to learn how to talk about commissions. The consumers are out there thinking that buyers get to buy a house for free. You need to get in front of that. Did they know? All right. What is going to be the downstream cause of this? Well, you're going to get your fuzzy butt sued. And we know that happened. Okay. So, now that I've set the table, all right, let me prepare the feast. So they did it again, and somehow National Association of Realtors did not promote this report this time. Okay, but it came out in August 24, and I'm sitting there taking a CE class, and the broker who's teaching that class, not mine, but another one, mentions this thing, and I like this guy because he will break up in the middle of a training and just like go on a tear. Like a soapbox ranty tear, and that just speaks to my heart. And so this new report's out, okay? And I'm starting to read the report. It's 114 pages, all right? And I'm just chunking through it, and it's good because every time I read a page, I was like, oh, I got 5 different ideas spouting off my head, writing it down. Oh, that's important to look out for. That's important to look for. So we'll see if their stuff comes through. They graded their previous report, the 2015 report. All right. And I guess they ran it through like a ChatGPT-4 or something and said, here's a report that we wrote based on what has happened since then. How accurate were they? And ChatGPT thinks they were 86% accurate. And I think that's pretty good. There's 1 or 2 things in there and they just seem like, we thought this was going to happen. It sort of happened, but not enough for us to call it a win. Legit. All right. But the next report, what's the big thing? Death of the broker model. All right. Death of the consumer interface. All right. We definitely are not allowed to, not only we're not just that we weren't allowed, but we're not capable of keeping a house from you the way Gladys used to like to. All right. Gladys, in case you guys haven't noticed, Gladys is like this term I have for this little straw lady who's everything that's wrong in the world. Gladys, the HOA president. Right? I know a lot of people like to use the term Karen. I'm married to one, so I got to go with Gladys. Okay, so if you hear me say Gladys, think in your head Karen, and you guys are probably right on that. So, but still, Gladys. All right. So when Gladys is sitting there doing her little thing, destroying my industry. All right. Now that she's no longer there. All right. Now she's got Jenny, the TikTok influencer star, and she's running around out there doing her thing. So where are we going to go on this? I'm loving it. It goes back to that quote right there. All right. Last year, when we started getting the turn down, I got excited. Okay, this January when they said, oh, wow, 80% or 70% of real estate agents did not do one transaction in 2024. All right. I had a physiological effect that I cannot describe on YouTube. All right. And I'm like, yes, let's get a housing recession going. Right? Let's get a downturn in the number of closings. Right? Not necessarily saying everybody needs to lose 20% of equity in their house or anything like that. But if we've only got away with 5 and we're just waiting for the interest rates to recover, but if we can sit there and hang out for a bit so this dead wood decides, I just don't want to renew my license, real estate's not really for me, I think it's going to be better for the consumer overall, because the ones that are going to fail are the bad ones. All right? The ones who are going to, maybe not you, okay, because you're working with me. I know. It's like when you're ready to buy or sell a house, you're going to be calling Ray, okay? But, we don't know who's going to be on that other side of that transaction, right? It might be somebody really bad. I've dealt with some really, really bad agents the last couple of years, right? The one that drove me nuts this year, guess what? She got her license severed by her broker, all right? You really have to screw up to get your license severed by your broker, all right? But those are the kind of people out there in the industry right now. So yeah, let's have a culling. Let's have a winnowing. All right. I just had a flashback to Watership Down. Okay, the Black Bunny of MRR or whatever that comes through. Because when you get too many rabbits in the warren, you get sickness and stuff like that. I mean, maybe that might be what we need to really start seeing happening on this. And it's funny. I had no idea what I was going to talk about when I turned on the camera. I just knew I do not know what's going to go on Thursday. So let's get something in the can so I can throw it out there just in case anything goes weird. But I sort of like the way this thing worked out. I don't think I swore. I'll keep Steve happy, keep the YouTube algorithm happy. And we'll see how it plays from there. So, all right, get my little conductor wand. Everybody, from the top. Watch the children and pets around the water. Never drive into anything flooded. Work your circles every day. I cannot say the word that I wanted to rhyme with day. So you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you guys all later.